everyone, it's Amber from Urban Timber Revival, and as you can tell, I'm engrossed in Christmas right now. I'm making this beautiful mountain, but I thought I would take a break and teach you all how to build a simple Christmas tree. So the materials you need are super simple. I usually use reclaimed wood, but mine's all covered in moss and wet right now. I live near Seattle, that happens. So I went to Home Depot and I picked up a cedar plank that you would build a new fence with. So this is a 6-foot long fence board and it's about 4 inches wide. You can get fence boards that are a little wider, and that's great. Your tree will just be taller. So I advise you to experiment with different sizes. Now you will also need a second piece of wood to build your tree on. So I happen to have this piece of scrap. It's about 2 inches wide. You just need enough base to nail that tree on. Now, if you don't have scrap at home, pick yourself up a 1x2. And if I didn't already say it, this will cost you about $2.50. A 1x2 be between $2 and $3.50. This is during COVID. If you watch this later in time, hopefully lumber prices are cheaper by then. But this is really all you need. So I'm going to turn the camera around and let's get started. All right, before we get started, I just want to talk about this board for a little bit, because the very first step is to make sure you measure correctly so that you don't run out of wood at the end, which I've done, by the way. So if I've measured correctly, I decided I'm going to start at about a 15-inch base, and I'm going to come down 1.5 inches until I'm at the very end. And if I've done this correctly, I should have just a little bit left at the end for a little grace for any mix-ups. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the angle of your cut. I see a lot of people make Christmas trees and it looks like the cut is at about 45 degrees, and that's way too sharp. They just look super awkward. So we're going to bring this cut down to 30 degrees. It will be a softer, gradual incline, and I think it will look great. So let's turn this camera around and I will show you the rest. Okay, so we're gonna get started, and just for a visual, I kind of penciled in some lines here. These probably aren't 30 degrees, but just so you can visually see, I'm starting from this point to this point, and I measured 15 inches here. So I know I need a cut coming here and a cut coming here, and then we will go on down the line and make each cut just a little bit shorter. Okay, so safety first. Put on your eye protection, your ear protection, and your mask. So I'm going to make that first 30-degree cut right now. Okay, so I'm bringing that blade down to the very top piece of that wood. I gave myself a little wiggle room, but just in case I don't want to waste anything. So I got that first 30-degree cut, and then we're going over to the other side to do it in the opposite direction, just like I had penciled it out. All right, so here's the first piece. Okay, so we have our first piece of wood cut. So the width between here and here was 15 inches. So we were right about here. And I need the second piece to be about 1.5 inches shorter. You could even go 2 inches. But I went ahead and I marked this at 13.5 inches. And I'm just gonna go with a saw and do another cut. And then we'll go on down the line till we get to the very top. So at this point, we're really just on repeat. So I'm cutting my second piece now. I take it back to the bench, measure, make sure you get another 1.5 inches off each piece until you can tell that you're at the top. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. But before I do that, let me let you in on a little secret. If you're someone who's going to build these out in bulk, let's say for a holiday show or as gifts, there is a faster way to do it. So what I would do is keep doing what I'm doing now. I would cut out all the pieces for one tree. Then I would keep those pieces as a template. I would take all those pieces and line them up on any future boards I have and just mark them with a pencil. It saves you the step of measuring each tree. At the very end, you can use that template and build your very last tree with it. All right, I cut all those pieces, so now I'm just going to put them on my bench and make sure everything looks okay. So again, each piece is 1.5 inches shorter than the piece before it, and this is looking good. Okay, so we've got most of this done. We just need the topper. And for the topper, we need a perfect triangle. And this is something I see people struggle with. But really, we've got our miter set at 30 degrees already. We're just gonna set that blade to the top corner and come down 30 degrees and it will be perfect for the top. Okay, so you see I put this piece of wood on here, and all you're gonna do is line it up so that blade gets up to that top corner and you're done. You've got a perfect triangle. So now that I have everything lined up, I'm just gonna demonstrate this for you. So again, I just came to that top corner. Looking good. All right, here's the moment of truth. Perfect. So now we need to put the back on this tree, and it's really your preference how long you want to make it. I cut mine at about 31 inches, and just remember you need to leave about an inch or two at the bottom of that tree for the base. So I'm just going to shorten this a little bit. I just did a straight cut on it, and we're going to attach it to the back. So you can either use wood glue and maybe put some weights on there to add some pressure. If it's going to be inside, you know, that would probably be good enough. But if it's going to be outside in the weather, I highly recommend nailing it down, or if you don't have a brad nailer, you could use wood screws. So to get this on there, I'm going to put about a 1/2 inch brad nail in my nail gun and just nail it right through the back. So now we're ready to get this attached. So you really want that support in the back straight. So I always get out a speed square and put it on the bottom and make sure I have it lined up plumb. And then we're going to just simply put wood glue on there and flip that right over and get it attached. Before you make this permanent, just make sure everything's lined up just how you want it to be. And I kind of squish it as I go along too, just to make sure that there's no gaps in those boards. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now it's time to put the base on it. Okay, so we're gonna take that same wood we used before and place it over the stalk of your tree, and then measure out to the outer edge of that bottom board. That will give you enough support to make the tree stable. So I'm going to just take this over to my saw, and I'm going to cut 4 of those pieces. All right, so here's our 4 pieces for the base. All right, so I'm going to exchange out the nails. I was using 1/2 inch nails, but when you're putting together the base, you're going through a few layers. So I'm going to put an inch nail in there. So what I do is I put the piece of wood on the base, and then I'll butt up another piece of wood against it just to make sure I'm getting it flush before I make a permanent commitment and start nailing. So I'm going to do one side here and turn it over and do the other side. Same thing, opposite direction. All right, so we're just working on the other side. Again, I butt a piece of wood up against the bottom just to make sure it's flush. Nail it down. And then we're gonna flip it and do the sides. And this part's easy because you already have something to butt that piece of wood up against. So plenty of wood glue. Again, we're just gonna nail these down. All right, we're on the last side. We're in the home stretch here. Okay, so I brought it outside for the stand test. It's working great. So I'm just gonna let that glue dry for a little bit, and then I'm gonna come in and sand off the rough edges and paint it. I'm just putting this board on my bench simply to keep it clean when I paint, because I just changed the paper. You do not have to do this. But I'm getting a sander. I'm just gonna roughly sand the edges. And I didn't even sand this board before I started. I like it to look a little rustic, but I definitely wanted to clean up the edges on it. So now I'm coming in with paint, and I'm not doing a thorough paint job on it. I'm just kind of doing a dry brush on it, and I'll show you why later. So if you're someone who might be thinking about doing these for holiday markets, I highly encourage you to get creative with your colors. Always do greens, of course, that's expected, but I do very well with whites, turquoise, blues, even black does well, surprisingly. So just get creative. You can also put designs on them. In the past, I've put words like joy on there, polka dots, whatever you want to do to dress it up. It's just cute to have some variety. So I've decided to add some snow to mine. So I'm showing you what I'm using today. And I'm using primer because cedar planks have what's called tannins in them, and they can lift and they can turn lighter colors or brownish color, which you don't want. And it can happen that day or a month later. You don't want to be surprised. So using primer is a good solution. It will not brown. So I'm going to keep just working this primer in with a dry brush technique and see how it looks and decide if I need to do anything further. So I decided to hit the edges of the tree with a little bit heavier paint as well. Call me crazy, but I decided that this tree needed some polka dots. I know that makes no sense, but when I take batches of these somewhere, I like each one to look just a little bit different. And when you make them different, you'll find that people like to buy like batches of 3 that kind of correspond. So I'm just going to add that to the bottom of here. We'll speed this up. And to do this, I'm using a pencil, and I just flipped it upside down, and I'm using the eraser tip to get a perfect circle. So I just kind of want to show you a close-up on the paint and some things I've learned over the years. One is that this base looks really new, right? But what I did is I dry brushed the paint on there. So I went with my layer of green, my layer of white, but you can still see the wood in there, which ties in with the base, which saves you a lot of time. I see some people staining the base, and that's fine too, but sometimes then the base ends up looking super dark compared to the paint on top. So this is just a solution I found. Now, if you're working with reclaimed wood, that's really nice because you get silvery tones as well as silvery tones under your paint too. So there's really no wrong way. It's just more of a preference. But we're gonna go stand this one up and see how it looks. Okay, so I have this one standing up, and because I dry brush, that's why I stand it up and look at it, because you can see how it's a little heavy on the bottom and not on the top. So I'm just gonna come in with my paintbrush and even it out. All right, so I'm literally just touching up the holes here, and when those polka dots dry, I might even do one more coat over everything just to even everything out. I'm going to keep playing with the paint on this one, but I do want to show you some from past years. So upcoming is some vibrant green with just different patterns, makes things interesting. And then I also like to put words on my trees. So on this one, I just did joy on some simple pastels and whites. That was super fun. And don't be afraid to keep your tree natural color either. I love the red with natural. So that concludes this DIY class. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope it inspires you to make your own tree. If you did find the video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you and happy holidays.